Okay, we are back.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks again. We'll do this third time unconstrained by time. That doesn't mean that we need to extend for hours. And
Yeah.
I let you just, James was making a closing remark before he left us. You had something to say about that.
Yeah. So it is. He was saying that we don't yet know if Bitcoin or anything else, for that matter, is actually a hedge against inflation or the problems. So I think, like most people who say this argument, I don't know if it's how James meant it, but most people, when you hear this argument, they kind of want to see a relationship between, for example, inflation or hyperinflation of, let's say, US dollar. If it goes up, then the value in real terms of Bitcoin goes up as well. That's how you see the hedge. It kind of balances out. But that's not how I personally perceive it. So let me give you an IT example. So in most servers, you want to have two hard drives. You don't know which one breaks, which one goes bad, but you want to have a backup storage if you don't want to lose your data. So now you have this financial system, money. I like an analogy or metaphor which says that money is a memory of good deeds of society. I provide you something good, some product or service, you give me money, and the fact that I own the money is the record that I provided you with a product or service you valued, and then I can spend this for someone else's service. So what I'm saying is not, I'm not one of the doomsday guys saying, dollar is going to shit, or I'm not definitely saying that I want that to happen, because that would be horrible. That would cause a lot of pain in the world, and a lot of people would actually have a really hard time surviving. So that's not what I'm predicting or proposing at all. All I'm saying is that it might be a good idea to have some of your good deeds recorded in the backup memory. If something goes wrong with the first one, and I'm not saying that it will, you still have a parallel financial system, parallel memory, parallel database of good deeds, if you will, that said that you provided some value and you can use it if something happens. So I don't think there is a direct relationship between, let's say, USD falling down and Bitcoin going up or something like that. It's not a hedge in this sense that balances it out. I'm just saying that it's always a good idea to have a backup, and that's what I would say is a tail risk approach.
Well, it
improbable.
makes for me it makes sense, huh? And to tell you that I don't know if Nassim is right, but just say this, that I have sometimes the impression, not saying you are doing this, but that someone makes like an eloquent argument case against Bitcoin, and that some guys who are in that space, or that find it interesting, or that shilling Bitcoin, that feel the obligation to just find arguments against, and this is like some of those arguments sometimes strike me as a bit bullshit, and anyway, and it's also just would like to understand, because you admit the possibility that some of the things that Nassim is saying, that Bitcoin goes obsolete, or that people lose an interest in Bitcoin, that may realize it's not something that you consider is impossible. You're just saying that you don't predict the doomsday for the US dollar, even if an hyperinflation crisis might be possible.
Yeah, definitely. By the way, I think that hyperinflation of US dollar is not really that plausible scenario. Like it would need a super total failure of American central bank, because they always have ways how to stop the inflation. It is really like if you think about countries like Venezuela, they just don't know what they're doing. I think that Fed is not managing US dollar correctly, but I don't think it is that they would so easily let the hyperinflation scenario happen, and they have a lot of tools in their disposal on how to stop it at the right time. So that would require super incompetence.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I'm not betting on it.
You are not what they call like a Bitcoin maximalist, right? It's the term
No.
like that Bitcoin will
Yes.
replace fiat, and then that the world will become Bitcoin, so to say. So, and this, which almost, I mean, for instance, Ricardo would not do that. He would talk about bimetallism and how like silver and gold were money for centuries and that kind of thing. It's like a US dollar will still be there, but as you say, it may make sense, which seems sensible to me. But the other side, it can also be that there is a need for an internet of money or something like that, and that is what you say, like, and that not being Bitcoin, even if it has a good network, I won't dispute. Probably it's the best that it is there today for crypto. But it may be that these examples are a bit used, but it comes all the time. You know that Bitcoin becomes the MySpace of Facebook, that kind of thing. It's not something that you roll out as an impossibility, right?
No, I don't.
Yeah. So you are not into that kind of religious fervor or revelation regarding Bitcoin that some in that space you say have, some in the Democrat Party or in the Republican Party may have a same kind of, you know, that adopt something as a substitute for religion or whatever. But you believe that Bitcoin is good because of the properties, you have studied them, you use them. There's also something that I find slightly interesting in this, because when I was discussing with Ricardo, I was laying out to him, wanted to discuss this with an expert of Cuba adopting Bitcoin, you know, as a hypothetical. How would that work, etc. Now, I miss the country, right? It was it seems Cubans are interested, but it's El Salvador who after I talked to Ricardo, seems that they are trying to realize something like that. No, which it may be again an interesting experiment, and it may be for people who believe in Bitcoin something to follow up very closely. And it's like in the timeline of maximalists and how we paid off, you know, is that you will have a first, I don't know, derivative markets, then funds investing in Bitcoin, then countries using it as a backup currency and things like that. It's like playing out against that scenario. So it's just yeah.
So
I mean,
El
you have a good reasons to pay out. You know that this is happening as per the book.
Yeah. So first of all, El Salvador is not such a nice country. I think it's like the second highest murder rate in the world and so on. So let me start by this, but I will tell you what they're doing and I will tell you why I think they're doing it. So it started yesterday. They introduced the law is actually in effect right now since yesterday. They have what is called a forced tender, which says that every merchant has to accept payment in both USD and Bitcoin. There are ways around it. If the merchant demonstrates that they don't have access to internet, for example, they don't have to accept it. But by default, a merchant should not refuse Bitcoin payment. They use the Lightning Network. Anyway, first of all, I think that they are solving two different problems. One of them is the problem of international transfers and internal transfers as well. So I have seen this in Panama and Paraguay as well. Panama, especially because Panama, same as El Salvador, they use USD as their currency. They don't have a central bank. And that means that all the transactions, they have to go through an intermediary bank, which is regulated by Fed. This causes a lot of trouble. In Panama, it means that a transaction for whatever, $1,000, $10,000 can easily take a month because it is investigated by the intermediary bank. The bank has to provide all the documents, what is this payment for, and so on. It is quite costly. People also use, if they just want to send money to their family, they're also using things like Western Union, which take 5 to 20%. So the first thing I think this solves for El Salvador, but also Panama. Panama has the opposite of forced tender in their constitution. They forbid the government to set any legal tender. So by default in Panama, people can use whatever currency they want, and they use Bitcoin quite a lot, especially for the remittances. So one of the things that is great is that it allows inflow of money from El Salvadorians working abroad in the US, for example, to send money back to their families without any additional costs. They make sure that the fees for receiving are super low. They're less than a few cents. And for this use case, they provide the hedging service. So you can actually use the Bitcoin Lightning Network to transfer USD from US to El Salvador. So this use case is just going around the super slow and inefficient payment network. It's not about future value of Bitcoin or something. They see it in their wallet, which is called Chivo. They see USD, it's hedged, it doesn't move with the exchange rate, and it's just a super easy way for them to receive dollars, and they can also change this Bitcoin hedged to USD to paper USD in ATMs. So they have deployed around 200 ATMs around the country. So when people say, okay, El Salvador is doing Bitcoin, first thing they say, okay, they want people to use Bitcoin as a currency. But how I perceive it, that's not what they're really doing because of these quite developed hedging options. What they don't do is the government solution is a surveillance system. It's not KYC free. So it is sort of an introduction of something like a central bank digital currency because the wallet integrates with their backend solution, and they have named accounts and everything like that. That being said, they also bought as a start 400 Bitcoin internally as to state treasury. So the state actually owns Bitcoin that is not hedged to USD, and I believe they hope, of course, that the Bitcoin will moon and they will make some more money. 400 Bitcoin is not that much given the state scale, but it's the first purchase. So I think these are two completely separate things, and I think that the problem that they're actually solving is are these inflexible payment networks of old fiat system because they're tied to US dollar.
Yeah, I don't know enough about what they are doing. I don't even know if it makes sense or not. I just suspect that if Bitcoin goes to zero, then people will not be accepted Bitcoins as a means of payment in in Ecuador, sorry, in El Salvador, as they are not accepting effectively bolivars today in Venezuela. But anyway, it's just because you talk about it and you are so knowledgeable. I happen to know you have Panama residency, right?
Yes, Panama and Paraguay.
Yeah. Is it just also just you are this kind of global how you spend time between it's random, or you spend so much time in this place of the world, in this place of the world? How you organize that?
It's for me, it's about optionality. So I think that Europe is getting a little bit crazy with COVID. I personally take COVID very seriously. I'm not a denier that it's a big problem, but I see something that in IT security we call security theater. So instead of really solving the problem, people, especially politicians, are mandating um, I would say feel good measures, check you at the border, show the 6-month old vaccination certificate, which doesn't really help much in the spread itself. So I think me and my friend Pavel, who is also the founder of this company that we do together to help people get currently mostly Paraguayan residencies. We wrote a series of articles that started in 2019. Now it will be 5th edition. And the title is How is Slovakia preparing for surveillance, dictatorship, or totalitarianism of Chinese type. So first we thought, okay, the state doesn't surveil how we move using our phones. Then suddenly in April, Slovak parliament passed a law that the operators need to report movements of the citizen abroad based on the phone. So there are many things in this process: financial surveillance, these COVID certificates, and all these things that make life in European Union at least a little bit, I would say, scary. I don't know if it's too bad yet, or if it will become worse, or if we go back to normal. But for me, it is so risky that I want to have an option to just live in Paraguay or in Panama, already have a work permit, already can just stay there however long I want, and see what is happening from across the ocean. So
yeah, well, that's the ultimate hedge.
Yeah, it's an option, and
an option,
it costs.
Yeah.
It costs something. Of course, you need to do the paperwork, and it costs money. But I
you need
believe
to have an address or something. It's just because I've considered in the past such kind of thing, but the fact of having to have an address, and there are companies that rent mailboxes, things like that. But
no, you don't need anything like that. So what you are getting is permanent residency permit. It's not as in Europe. Usually, you register your residency at an address, at a house, apartment, or something. But this is just a card saying that you can stay there however long you want. You can start companies there. You can work there, and you can basically move around and be considered a permanent resident. But it doesn't mention, they didn't even ask any address where I would want to live. So
I'd say that honestly it makes sense. As much as I'm not a libertarian, she's not in the same way that you are, definitely. Is that I have to say that that it's true. That this is all these actualizations and Europe becoming like closer to China in many ways. It's undeniable. It's happening. And well, if you are a libertarian as you are, it might be very scary. Even if you aren't, for me, it's not just that it is this. It may be scary or not. I have nothing to hide, so to say, but it's also that many of these policies are actually stupid.
Yeah.
So the application doesn't make any sense. So that bothers me profoundly or deeply. Well,
Yes,
let's come back to the Bitcoin, because I think that there were some things that just try to. This is going to be a bit hectic because it's not very linear what we are discussing. But anyway, no worries.
Linearity is boring anyway.
I hope someone will watch this. I hope they will enjoy it. Then it's just that some of the remarks that Taleb is doing, or some of the things that he's saying in his paper, for me, they make sense. I'm not an expert. I don't pretend I know and so on, but this is, you say that some of the appeal of Bitcoin is precisely that the number of coins is predetermined. So that, I mean, if I understand it, it may be the appeal, but it may be a wrong idea. And, it's just like, if the fundamental is wrong, even if it's appealing for the wrong reasons, eventually it will prevent that scalability. It says that if the number of coins is limited, it will eventually be a deflationary coin. And that's people who are into Bitcoin, I think that don't dispute that. And it's that the deflationary coin is intrinsically problematic. I'm not even sure if Nassim is saying it, but some other people are saying so. And it's something that I've watched, or I've read some of your remarks in the past, and it's like, for you it's like a non-issue, or it's like it's as much as really, I think you are honest, and when you are like explaining your involvement in the community, the lots of things that you are doing that seem very interesting, that the fact that you try to dismiss out hand such things as non-issues. I'm not saying you, but like in general, people who believe in Bitcoin, that seems to me problematic.
So for the case of deflation, first of all, end of 19th century US was a deflationary time, and it was one of the most growth that US experienced during the deflationary period. So there is at least one very good historical example where deflation was happening and it was not a problem. But the reason why I think it's not a problem is that deflation is in real terms is actually natural, because we have increase of productivity, we have technological progress. So it is natural that making something 10 years from now is easier, meaning it consumes less resources, labor, material, machines, and everything, that it should be cheaper in real terms. This computer that I'm using to communicate with you, I know for sure that in 5 years it will cost less, even in this inflationary environment. The deflation of the price of laptops is even higher than inflation. So these pressures are constantly happening. It's not only about the money that you use, but in real terms, if you produce the same amount of output, it should buy you more if we still have technological progress and increase in productivity. That's natural. So I actually think that inflation or a stable value, stable meaning zero inflation and zero deflation, um, that is not natural and not what actually the market is producing. We should actually see lower prices every year, because we create new machines, we are more innovative in how we cooperate, in what we do, and so on.
Well,
So
I understand. I understand. I mean, that technology progresses, but I mean that may be irrelevant if I want to buy a 100 square meter apartment in the center of New York. You know, it's just that the technology has little to do with that, and at the end, this is like a
no,
credit system.
that's not true, because the technology. So what happened in COVID? People couldn't go to the office. They moved. They realized, okay, I don't have to stay in the center of New York City because it's too expensive. I moved to Denver or whatever. My rent is 1/3, and the technology that enables me my participation in my job is Zoom that we are using, and it is very, very counterintuitive, because the technology that actually allows this deflationary pressure has nothing to do with real estate, but it actually affects the value of property. So okay, if you are talking about real estate in the center of New York City, then of course that's scarce, and maybe if the demand will go up, the prices will go up. But contrary to that, the technology enables you to teleport to your work from wherever you want, India, China, whatever. And 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 this is the effect. So you cannot compare just the prices of asset to asset.
Yeah, no, I understand. You point out to the dynamic, and maybe this my example was unfortunate. Okay, it's like I said like what you call Beveland goods. Okay, so it's like if it will be jewelry or something like that, relative. So it's some goods that will not technology will not make a dent, and the thing is that if the deflationary coins being problematic, it's also that you mentioned one example. It's a valid one, but you could give like counter examples of that some authors do that gold standard, and fiat currencies being pegged to gold in the 30s, leading to the Great Recession or leading to the Asynod of Niceism, or is it that gold production not being linked to the real economy, and then that eventually leading to in the 70s the Americans leaving out the gold convertibility for US dollars, and it is that things that to dismiss them out of fund, and it's also human nature. Okay, it's like it may be that it makes sense that we are deflationary, but if guys are like very much against accepting salary cuts, which is the case as rises, then a deflationary currency can be intrinsically problematic just because people don't think in those terms. Actually, we have had such instances. So I think that probably the median or the average salary in Spain has probably gone down in the last 5 to 6 years, and that has been probably a painful process for more people, or most people who know that the guy who entered the workforce 10 years ago was making more than the guy who is entering today. Whereas when you have a devaluation, that would be less visible, so to say. It's like you are hiding other problems. Okay, but it's like if an Italian in the 1960 was earning 50,000 liras, and the average salary in 1970 was 150,000 liras, then he would not have this impression of being poorer, even if lira against US dollar would have plummeted in their value. So I think that there are some of
that's an
these,
illusion. That's why we have have these, and that's why states push these inflationary currencies, because people only see the numbers and they don't realize that they're actually getting poorer, even if the number on the salary slip goes up. So I think that's fundamentally dishonest, and I would rather keep my purchasing power and accept a lower salary than see a larger number and more papers in my wallet and be poorer in the end. So I don't like. I get the argument, of course. When you don't see it directly, even if you calculate
it
like
may not be
or
a
something.
definite argument. And I also give you that people may adjust to like having a salary that is lower in terms of Bitcoin that the salary that they were having 10 years ago and that kind of thing. But this is also, this, for me, one other aspect that if it's directly in the Bitcoin, and he has mentioned that it's the size of the economy, the state in the economy today. This is that as you say, in advanced economies, may be like almost half of the economy. So that half of the GDP depends directly on the government intervention. Or
that's the
and
case.
Governments, like, I mean, have some control on fiat. They don't on Bitcoin. It's like, I mean, it's just the clearest example is the U.S. Air Force being paid in Bitcoin. I don't think that that's something that the U.S. can accept, almost for security reasons. No?
Yes, of course, but I
you
don't
are,
want to pay it.
you are not a maximalist. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But even though it's like there are good enough reasons to believe that fiat is going to be here to stay. You know.
Could be. By the way, one thing, I don't think that inflation or creating new units of money is actually the main problem. It is unpredictable creation of new units of money. So gold has inflation because people dig it out of the ground all the time, and new units of gold are being created. So that's not a problem because an approximate rate how it's going, how it's happening, and you can price it. So just someone randomly printing a few $1 billion rescue package or something like that suddenly out of nothing, without people being able to know it in advance, that's a problem, because then you cannot calculate. Then fiat is also unusable as a numeraire, because you cannot do long-term planning. You don't know the value of the coin in 10 years.
Let's just say that gold is actually, I mean, this guy who fell out with Nassim, he's more often wrong judging people than he's judging issues. I said in the past that this cipher, then in his book, he says something like the stock to flow ratio of gold. He says we keep producing gold, but the stock to flow ratio, the production of gold has never exceeded, I don't know, this is 2% of the existing stock, and that's what makes it to have a predictable. The fact that the output is predictable regarding the stock, it makes the value of gold predictable. But
by the way, I don't agree with the stock to flow model. So just
okay,
to say,
maybe let's
but yeah,
explain why.
It's true.
But what Nassim is saying is that, I mean, okay, some say that Bitcoin is digital gold. Fine, it is designed that way, but the number of coins is capped, right? So then it's not exactly the same then.
No, it's well, it's kept in year 2140 will be the last new Bitcoin mined. So essentially, right now it's more like gold. But I don't think that the exact number is that important. Of course, what is important is who gets the new units of money. So if you need to actually work for it, or you press a button in the computer of the central bank and it appears on your account, which the states have the privilege of having. It's a little bit more complicated, but essentially they basically steal the production of the society by Cantillon effect, which says that the inflation is not distributed equally. It is someone gets the new units of money, and the question is what do they have to do to get it? In Bitcoin, they have to help secure the network. In gold, they have to dig in the ground, and actually the profit margins in both of these things are quite low. With Bitcoin mining, it is around 10% usually if you can get a good electricity source. So it's not such a lucrative business. And with state money, it is it just appears, and you just promise to pay it back, but you usually pay it back, or the states pay it back with newly borrowed money later. And that is what I agree with most Bitcoiners and goldbugs, is that this is not fair, that they didn't do any good deed to deserve this record in the database. It just appeared out of thin air.
Well, going back to that, is that as much as I have no reason to think this, okay, so it's just pure speculation, but I suspect that as much as you say that money should be like a kind of ledger of good deeds, kind of thing, that seems very reasonable to me. That a lot of guys who got into Bitcoin is just because they were computer nerds or whatever, and were lucky, and then that precisely an amount of coins that it is limited, you will be rewarding good deeds, but just some guys of some very specific profile that didn't. They were just lucky to be there in the appropriate time, and that that got those credits, and that eventually, because the amount of Bitcoin is capped and got there in time, they will become like little feudal lords, and this is as much as I tell you that I don't have any reason to think this, because Nassim is giving, like, for me, like, fundamental reasons why he thinks Bitcoin should be price zero. But I think that there is also other reasons he may dislike Bitcoin. It's like if it was really like going to be relevant, if it was going to be a threat to the US dollar or something, where it may be problematic because the social effects that it might entail, it's like not necessarily good. Freedom and escape government surveillance that might be there, but that you are rewarding the wrong people, or that that you really have. Are creating rewarding some people that were there for the rent seeking, etc. That sort of thing, that it may make us more or a less dynamic society. That maybe he would see something like that and he wouldn't like it. And if he doesn't, it's just about fundamental reasons why he thinks that Bitcoin is not worth more than zero. Then I do I do see that as potentially problematic. You know, if Bitcoin were to become a big thing, that maybe it's essentially problematic.
I think I don't like this argument at all. I think that they are not these people are not rewarded just because they're lucky. Well, there's luck and risk, but they're actually rewarded as people who invested mostly their time, maybe their computing power, their attention on something that was from the beginning no one knew if it would be valuable at all. You remember the 10,000 Bitcoin pizza. It really had no value, and these people.
When you were so sorry to interrupt. When did you heard about Bitcoin, and when did you got interested in the space? Since the beginning, or years after the white paper?
Very soon after white paper, but I couldn't buy it and I didn't get the mining at first, how it works. So I was just studying it, and it took me a while to be able to actually purchase something else than testnet coins to play with it. So I'm not actually one of the first ones who got the Bitcoin, but I'm one of the first ones. I actually read the news about the Bitcoin white paper on a IT daily news site. So I read it the day it came out, or a few days after that when it was reported. So I think that this early discovery process, this early building of the network effect, if we even talk about the Metcalfe law, that it's quadratic to the number of nodes. When the number of nodes is super low, then it's not very valuable. And I think the first nodes, first people who you could transact with should be rewarded. It's not luck. It's there are some people, for example, a very famous thing, one of the few things you could buy with Bitcoin back then were alpaca socks somewhere in US. I don't even know where. And these were the people who thought, okay, this is honest money. We like it, and we will give you our good deeds, our products, for this coin that doesn't even have an exchange rate, and we just make something up, and we will give you something that we created. So I don't agree with this point of view that it's just IT people who are lucky because they could have whatever. They could have bought gold, they could have played games, whatever. Sold their time and
say
do
that
something
you
else.
seem to me that you are spending a lot of time, for instance, trying to spend Bitcoin where you will not have, like, I mean, if you believe, as apparently you seem to believe, that Bitcoin is hard money and is the future of money, why would you try to pay like your soup with Bitcoin in Bali, right? If it's not to create this kind of environment or to make it become like a viable means of payment, and that's, with personally, you strike me as honest, because that's a rational, right? If you are paying people that participate in this parallel policy in parallel policy, is it yeah?
Yes.
And or you're trying to pay, even if it's and you explain it in your book, it can be painful, and that just someone was asking you like for the proof that the block was mined or something like this.
Yes,
it just was not happening because it was a very low amount. If you are taking all those, if you are bothering to do all these things, that is. I mean, and if you are just not hoarding the money or like hodling or speculating on it, that. Yeah, that should have some value. Yeah, I do agree. There's also something that I think that you will be unusual in that that most people who are into Bitcoin will be more like I would say, when I was having substantial for my standard amount of my portfolio invested in it. In that, I don't care about all those things, and it's just it's also that you I think you have, for instance, the things that I've seen, that people that are apparently knowledgeable in Bitcoin, that they read the posts and they talk about it all the time, etc. You have this Lightning network course or something. They just say, I think you posted some videos of demos. It seemed to me, I've never used it, it's slightly complicated to use, more than just, Apple Pay app. But it's like you are using it. And so what I was surprised is that apparently, even if, and it's something I think Nassim says also, even if people say like, okay, scalability, and it's a Lightning Network, but so few people are using the Lightning Network effectively. Maybe Salvador is an exception, but people who are actively trading Bitcoin futures, who believe in crypto or something like that, that were asking you questions in chats or something, and how is this Lightning Network working and things like that. I was surprised that they were asking you, because I think, I thought that this guy was, using Bitcoin and he was like shilling Bitcoin, etc. He would know these things, but they don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a new technology, so people, of course, take time to get used to it, to actually take some time to install the wallet and try it out. So it's a different protocol. Now there will be much more users. What is bad is that they're forced to use it. I am talking about El Salvador. But about the complication thing, I guarantee you that Apple Pay is more complicated technologically than Lightning Network. You just don't understand it. And the same way that you don't need to understand how the Lightning Network works if you have a normal user-facing wallet that just sends the payment. So
I don't understand. It's just something also that I told, I think, Ricardo. I don't understand Swiss franc. Huh? I use them all the time, but it's just like if I know what the Swiss franc is thinking of if they are paying, which they were doing at some time against the euro, or they are not doing this. I'm not on top of those things, and still I can use Swiss francs. I don't understand Apple Pay. I don't understand the Lightning Network. It just seemed, as I think I saw a video that you posted, that it was more complicated to use than Apple Pay, but I have never used Lightning Network. Okay, so
that's
I admit
the video you're
I
talking about. The video you're talking about is the technical explanation how it works. The normal use case is very simple. You just scan the QR code with an invoice and you click send. And the way you create the invoice is you type, I want 20 euros or whatever currency that you use, or Bitcoin, and you click receive and it creates the QR code. If you are not in person, so you can't physically scan the QR code. If you're, for example, communicating like this, then you can send a string that it generates and you just pay it. So scanning QR code and hitting send is quite simple, I think.
I'll go to just one like a reservation about Bitcoin in general, as I'm not sure the decision paper, before maybe we can pass to something else. Is in your book again that you seem to, for instance, well, I will not talk energy. Okay, just you will tell us if you want, but for instance, you say money laundering, and for me, it's one of the obvious use cases of crypto. There's illegal activities.
Mm-hmm.
It could be like people who don't want to their activities to be registered via credit card company, via bank or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They could use cash, gold, and they do that, or diamonds or whatever. I fully agree with that. But that crypto would be like a good way to create this parallel economy and avoid penalties for doing illegal activities. And it's, for me, it's actually hackers are using Bitcoin. Even if Taleb, I think it says like it's not even, Bitcoin is not even very useful for that, because there was the colonial pipeline thing, and they managed to watch the transactions that were happening, and they managed to recover part of the ransom. So it may not be so useful for that purpose because it's so transparent, but some other crypto may actually, like Monero, I think is something that is used. It may actually be an excellent use case for doing illegal activities, and they have been so in the dark web for illegal activities in the past. And you, what I saw in your book is that, again, you dismiss it as like a false problem, in that you say like money laundering is not the problem itself. The problem is the illegal activity. So follow the, like, if there is like a proxeneters or drug dealers that are having illegal activities, go after their illegal activities. Don't bother about the laundering issue. There is a non-issue. But you understand the dynamics. You were explaining me before, like, for instance, how technology may affect the price of real estate in New York. It's like, if you make it very easy to hide the profits of proxenetism, more people may be interested into doing such an activity. You know, it's just that again, it's just because I happened to notice that as I was going through your book, and well, this
you did your homework. More than I thought. I was just sending it to you to just check it out. You apparently read it.
I should have done more, but I didn't have the time to read all the 150 pages, but let's say that more than 100 for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about these topics. So one of the things that is unfortunately completely enabled by crypto is ransomware, and maybe we could generalize to blackmail. That is super easier thanks to crypto. It's unfortunate, handing someone a suitcase with $1 million is very risky for the blackmailer. Sending them a QR code to pay $1 million in Monero, for example, which is not easily traceable, is easy, and it definitely enables especially the ransomware. So I don't know if people who listen know what ransomware is. It's a form of virus that encrypts your hard drive, and then tells you that unless you pay money, they will not allow you to access your files. So if you don't have backup, then you're screwed, and you either lose your data or you have to pay the ransom. So this was not possible before cryptocurrencies. There was no unstoppable, untraceable money. So this is definitely a problem, and it's something that we need to deal with somehow, and we need to find ways to deal with it. I think the right way to deal with it is to make our computers more secure and not allow these viruses to be installed. So it's a job for antivirus companies. Unfortunately, we can think about crypto whatever we want. You can be a total no-coiner, Bitcoin hater, but if your data is encrypted, it doesn't help you at all. So it's not something that we're like, if you don't stop crypto completely, this will be happening. There is no way around it. So the only option that we have is to find out how we're going to deal with it. There's nothing else that we can do. That being said, most money launderers actually don't want to keep the crypto. They want to use it in the real economy. So if someone wants to buy a skyscraper from the proceeds of their human trafficking enterprise or something like that, they will need to show the source of funds used to purchase it, and it doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin or USD in a suitcase or whatever else. So I think that money laundering itself is a failure to actually deal with the crime. So instead of stopping the crime, the governments mainly, or the organizations, are saying we cannot do our job. We are bad at preventing crime, so we outsource at least the discovery of the process of the crime to banks. One of my friends, he's a CEO of a financial institution, a money transfer institution, and he told me that when he was being hired, they didn't tell him that he's going to be a CEO of a police station, but that's 80 or 90% of his job. He's doing what police and state investigators fail to do. And this is a normal financial institution, doesn't have anything to do with Bitcoin. So I think that money laundering, first of all, the real money laundering, when the criminals want to actually make use of their wealth, so not buying a car, but investing in real estate, investing in something that is valuable, it is much easier right now for them to go through a traditional financial system. Like, you cannot buy a skyscraper directly with Bitcoin. If you want to send $100 million or euros from an exchange to your bank account, the bank will ask you where you got the money, if it's clean, and so on. So for large scale money laundering, I don't think that crypto is currently very useful, just because it stands out. So without contacts in bank, in exchanges, and so on, it is actually very difficult to launder large amounts of money. And again, I would recommend the occupations related to justice to focus on the actual crimes, because when they already have the money, that means that they failed. It's what a shitty service. You pay them to prevent crime, and they go after the proceeds of the crime that already happens. Also, it has been spectacularly not effective. It costs, I think, if I remember it correctly, around 100 times more than the amount of laundering they prevent. So we all are paying for every dollar that they stop in money laundering, we are paying $100, which is just doesn't make sense. This return.
I would need to check that, because I think I've seen different figures, but
I read some study. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was definitely multiple of what they prevent, and at least one order of magnitude for sure.
Well, it may be so that there's also a lot of it that it will never be detected, in spite of the efforts. Yeah. But it's also, you cannot measure what, just because the likelihood that there are controls, etc., that people will not be doing certain activities that they would be doing if there was no control at all. That will be very difficult to measure. But yeah, I get your point. Anyway, it says, just before we will close, that I was. You clearly have read a lot of Nassim, because it also in your book. Yeah. Okay, you use the terms like skin in the game, for instance. Why you don't like a consultant that it is asking you to implement a blockchain or trying to find a business case for you to build a private blockchain in your company versus someone who is investing in Bitcoin and such kind of things. It comes all the time. I think you were in one of the first Ruris. Were you?
Probably, yeah.
Because you happen to know, so these groups that we are participating now on Signal, etc., they were created recently, and you didn't know about that because they were not existing after the same editions as the first editions, as far as I know. So
yeah.
And it's like I told before to James, he didn't seem very interested in that turn of the conversation about the sectarian aspect of some of the Nassim following. I would be an example, but I tell you that at some point I embrace it. I do it also with a certain sense of humor. Okay, so it's just, but I find it somehow interesting. And you were telling me, maybe it used to be like that, but then Nassim started to say that use terms like bidiots or bidiots, or I don't know what's the term he has coined, and say that Bitcoin is a Ponzi or something like that, which maybe puts me out. Does it? It's like, I mean, you cannot be simultaneously someone who believes in Bitcoin and who participates into this, what I was just describing.
Well, as you can see in the discussions, it is a very diverse set of opinions on everything, including Bitcoin. And what I like about the Ruri alumni groups is that we can have a civilized discussion, unlike many Twitter discussions. We can actually interact and accept different points of view. So
I have the impression that actually Nassim has alienated a big part of his base by taking these positions, which is like, I mean, but well, maybe not so much. There's like, again, the people who were owning Bitcoin and following him were not that many. But before, because I got interested in Bitcoin partly because of Nassim. I mean, not in he used to like Bitcoin. He made the introduction of Saifedean's book, right? And then just if he didn't like it, he used to be interested in it.
He actually spoke at Parallel Police at one of our conferences.
Oh, he did.
I was introducing him. So well, I think there is not a person in this planet that I agree with in 100% of things. So you can be a fan of concepts like anti-fragility, uncertainty, and risk management, and at the same time think that the Bitcoin black paper is very poorly written, and it doesn't, at least to me, it's not that like I disagree with it so fundamentally that I think even the measure that he uses of the net present value is just made up. I think to me, at least, it seems
would you go as far to say that it's a dishonest paper?
That I don't know. I cannot say that, but I think it's a reaction and post-rationalization of some unpleasant Twitter interactions. I get, Saifedean is this carnivore guy eating only meat and saying that if you eat meat, then COVID doesn't exist and it's harmless and stuff like that. And
also, this was
kind of
it seemed like I don't follow Saifedean, but people retweeting and that kind of thing. There's something like it's very wrong. Even in his own book, which has like interesting parts because it refers to history of money and things like that, that I am inclined to be interested. But I think that there were dishonest parts. For instance, I told this to Ricardo as well, when he characterizes gayness or his sexuality, among like what his ideological choices might be driven by his sexuality, and that kind of thing that seemed dishonest. And it seemed that as Nassim is taking these stances that are contrary to his, I saw some dishonest behavior on Twitter on these guys. Like, for instance, when Nassim was actually saying that the Lebanese pound was like a Ponzi scheme because if you know about that it was pegged against the
Don't
dollar.
know much.
I don't know much about it, but I went to Lebanon, and it was very expensive. This was 2018. Not 2019, sorry. And it was very expensive. It was before the crash. Very expensive for similar countries that I visited. And they had a peg of the Lebanese pound against the dollar, and it was sort of a Ponzi. In that there were like some reserves of the central bank, and that they were not being able to back up with actual US dollars the accounts in Lebanese pounds, and it collapsed, and now there's like apparently it's a very, very bad situation as far as I know. And there is going like a kind of Venezuelan scenario. Last time I spoke to a friend of Nassim, who's also a friend of mine, because when I was there, he invited me to have dinner, etc. The people are like struggling to find a liter of petrol, just to make their electrogen group work, and that sort of situation. So pretty bad stuff, and driven by the fact that there was a Ponzi scheme on this peg of the Lebanese pound with the US dollar, which collapsed. And he was tweeting about that, and it's like calling the Lebanese central bank like a scammer, and he was heading a Ponzi, and it's just like, and this guy Saifedean managed to cherry pick some tweets where he apparently was saying something else and was retweeting them and putting Nassim words that were not there. When he was saying like, okay, we should not panic or something like that, when he was referring to something else, not to the it seemed very dishonest, and Ricardo retweeted such things on top of that, which was I found it unfortunate, and yeah, I'm not even know what I'm telling you this, but it's like that I saw that some of the behaviors of these guys were fundamentally dishonest. I've not seen that in Nassim. Okay, so it's just,
yes.
I mean,
So
he may be wrong, but I've not seen like doing character assassination or trying to distort what someone like you may have said about Bitcoin or
yeah, you're right. I think it is the Bitcoin black paper. I personally see it as a reaction to these kind of unpleasant interactions on Twitter. I have to say I don't read Twitter at all, not even Nassim's. I am on it, but I only post through an app. So I don't know about the interactions,
okay,
but
I spend a lot
to
of
me,
time on it. So.
Yeah. So to me, it seems that the Bitcoin black paper is kind of like a reaction. Okay, this guy is wrong about COVID, about this. So he kind of looked into Bitcoin, because then, of course, the religious Bitcoin maximalists, they kind of keep together, and they all started to go with Saifedean and so on. So. But to me, the Bitcoin black paper is just wrong in its content. It's like, even as I said in the beginning, even the first equation doesn't make sense, because that's not the net present value is not something that is actually used. It was invented by Nassim. I asked my friends who are economists.
Actually, I think he's like, I mean, I've not got to that level of detail, but he's quoting like his model. He's quoting the model of another guy who was head of the IMF, Blanchard
but
or something like that. You know,
they're not using using it as a real measure, because the only price that you can talk about is either the current price, which happens at the top of the order book when the ask and bid meets, or you can speculate about the future price, but there is no such thing as a net present value that is composed exactly of these things, because you can give value to something based on other aspects than cash flow and future value. So as I said, liquidity is completely out of the equation, and so on. So to me, it is like, it even looks like like a sloppy writing. I am happy that it's not in a book, that it's just a paper.
It's as James has, it has been accepted in a major financial magazine, I think. It's just, I mean, which would be like, they would have a, but okay. Anyway, I think let's just say this because it seems like for me that now you're psychologizing, and it says that you are even wrong, okay? But it's like pretending that there's like personal motives for him to have this opinion.
It's complete speculation. I
okay,
don't know.
I've speculated
I get
of him, for instance, being ideologically motivated or something. Like, I mean, I think, for instance, because he replied that to me on Twitter, that he might think that Bitcoin may be a threat to US dollar, and that if that is the case, that may be like this might be problematic for the US, grip on the world's economy, the US government. Which, I mean, this is again speculation. Okay, but it's just because I think I asked the question on Twitter: why would the FSB shield Bitcoin? You know, because he more or less made a connection between Snowden, the FSB, you know, something like that. It's like, I don't understand this. Why would you imply that the FSB would be shielding Bitcoin? It's like, I don't know. He says something like that. I don't know, because maybe because it undermines the US dollar. He says something like that. It's like just the fact that he put in words something like that. Maybe that he thinks of that as a possibility. And if that is problematic, or he, you know, maybe there is a patriotic case, as he's an American citizen, to be against Bitcoin, because it's competition for the US dollar. But this is, again, it's pure speculation. I don't know if this is the case. It's not in his paper. I'm just in a way making it up, and it's okay that you explain his motives as driven by some Twitter fight, or the fight of having a Twitter fight. It may not even be absurd. You know? I tell you that, for instance, I saw something. I think, again, I'm going to speculation again, but a lot of people in the Bitcoin community, including yourself, I think that were very bothered that he went to the BSV conference of this guy who is like a kind of an scammer that has some claim of being a Satoshi and something like that, you know. And this is like, Ricardo told me that he warned him against that or something like that, and he, in spite of that, he went there, and that's like something that many, I don't know if you personally, but many people in the Bitcoin community hold against him. Like, he went to Craig Wright's conference for BSV. He went there to say his ideas about what Bitcoin was uh, was not a good idea, and etc. So you went to a Bitcoin conference, not the Bitcoin that you like, another one, another fork, to say that that Bitcoin was a terrible idea. And I think that, personally, I think like people like Ricardo were telling me, we were telling him in advance. It's like he went because people like Ricardo will be bothered by that. It's like it's like I wouldn't let. I'm making this up, but I won't let someone like Ricardo set up my own agenda.
Yes, I agree with not letting people set up your agenda, but like I'm not even bothered by that. It's just purely funny because these people it's like total charlatans. It's like if you follow who these people actually are, it's like explaining the effects of vaccines on to snake oil sellers. Like these people really have a like I can talk to you, talk to James about the merits of Bitcoin. These people are not even discussing. They're just generating words, and
I
it's
believe
just
you, but he was
it's
not
just a
there to endorse VSV. He was there. He went there and he appeared in, as you are doing right now
yeah.
in this podcast or whatever you
I
want to call it,
I don't
to say
think
that Bitcoin was a bad idea.
I think exactly like I wouldn't do that. Going to a
Okay,
total
okay. Let
charlatan
me also say,
conference.
if the guy
Yeah,
is a charlatan, that apparently is, because I think VSV had like a double spin attack, right? Shortly after that.
several of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, if the guy is apparently a charlatan, as you claim to be, and you know better, uh, and apparently he is, I think Nassim has said in the past that he doesn't talk to charlatans. So that will be in contradiction to one of his prior statements. But who does not contradict himself? I mean,
Yeah.
only idiots, I would say.
I hope he didn't really know what he was doing, because if he really understood these people, it's like like it's a waste of time. You don't go there to discuss with them at all. Actually, it's just like if they came came to, for example, I mean the Craig Wright and Calvin Ayre, like if they came to conference that I organized, I would just laugh. It's just you don't even spend time to discuss with them because they're opening their mouths, but
Okay.
it just doesn't make any
I'll take
sense.
your word for that. Also, I will take your word about you being a minor celebrity in Slovakia. You told us that you have several books published, and then in the crypto space in Slovakia, you're a big fish. Thank you for doing this. So that I'll just to quote you, because I don't know much about Slovakia. I spent a few days in
Mhm.
Bratislava a few years ago.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I think I was not nor into crypto space nor into Ruri that much by then, so we would not have met
Mhm.
because I would like to see parallel polis. Uh, but I recovered this quote from a recent read of Joseph Roth, the writer. Uh, I don't have a stereotype for Slovaks,
Mhm.
but he was describing a Czech cook that was working one of the hotels he was staying, and he said that he was like kind of um, combination of all Austro-Hungarian virtues, and he described him as hardworking as a Czech, methodical as a German, imaginative as a Slovak, and astute as a Jew. And it is like I didn't know that Slovaks had uh, a reputation for being like dreamers or imaginative. But it's like this goes very well with Juraj. Huh? So
Okay, thank you. I don't think it's a stereotype for Slovaks, but I
well,
take the
he used it
compliment.
that way.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, it's a pleasure to talk to you. We've been talking for hours now, so we'll let you go have dinner. Thanks,
Thank you very
thanks for doing
much.
this.
Thanks for
And
having
let's see you
me
next time.
and James. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.